我们把自己称为这个升学资源的 Costco，也就是说，所有的进到我们这一个升学超市里面的这个资源的话呢，都是经过我们的这一个家长的推荐，以及我们的这一个前期的把关。也就是说，您在这一个超市里面选购的这么一个升学资源的话呢，肯定是在质量上面是没有问题的。同时的话呢，我们也会根据您的这一个孩子的一个具体情况，还有您的这个家庭的需求，为你来推荐和匹配最合适您的这个升学资源。我们说，其实合适的才是最好的，不一定是最贵的或者是最便宜的。所以在这个挑选这个升学资源方面的话呢，我们也是尽量的希望帮助我们的这个家长节约时间，做到这个投资回报率尽可能的高。目前的话呢，我们也知道前几天哈，这个刚刚是这个早生的这么一个消息传过来，我们说几家欢喜几家忧哈。其实我们的这一个学生的话呢，也是一样的，有一些学生是被 reject，有一些学生被 defer，这个都是很就是时常会发生的这样的情况哈。同时的话呢，我们也有学生是很幸运的拿到了早生的 offer。目前的话呢，我们是有拿到 MIT 的，MIT 是今天才出的消息，还有普林斯顿、康奈尔、杜克，包括我们的 NYU 哈，这个 Amherst、CMU，我们都是很幸运的有这个学生拿到了这个 offer。今天的话呢，我们邀请到的这一个 Danny 哈，他的话呢，他的学生今年是拿到了非常好的一个成绩，基本上是70%的学生哈，早生就已经走掉了。到时候他开始这个讲座的时候呢，会给我们大概的详细介绍一下今年他的这样的一个早生的一个情况。呃，我们 IvyCompass 的话呢，除了这个升学的这个资源之外哈，我们还会平均每个月都会进行1到2场的在线的升学的这么一个公益讲座。这些所有的这个回放哈，在我们的网站上都可以看到。您可以登录我们的网站，现在屏幕上面有我们的这个网址，之后我也会打在 chat box 里面，您可以观看过去的这个不同的 topic 的这样的一个升学的干货满满的这样的一个 webinar 哈。现在目前的话呢，屏幕上是我们的联系方式。在这个讲座的 Q&A 环节的话呢，我还会继续的来展示我们的这个联系方式。您可以关注我们的微信公众号，以及扫我们的小助手2维码，进入到我们的这个升学的社群里面。通常的话呢，我们的讲座出来之后，我们会在社群里面进行通知。此外的话呢，我们的这一个每个月在进行的这一个讲座的信息哈，我们也会第一时间的在群里面进行通知。如果您不想错过我们的讲座的话呢，欢迎您入群，我们保持一个比较紧密的联系。好的，目前我看到那个 Demi 已经上线了哈，今天我们的这个主角是 Demi 啊，我就不多这个花时间赘述了。他的背景的话呢，大家可以看到哈，目前在屏幕上面非常有经验的这一个升学顾问，特别是在 STEM 和这个商科申请方面，我们说。他的学生哈，我们说开玩笑说华裔小中南比较多哈，他也非常知道和华裔小中南以及这个 STEM 方向的学生怎么去交流，以及怎么去挖掘他们的一个亮点和特色，特别是在最后的这个文书写作的这个阶段哈，他的这个写作能力也是非常的厉害的。好的，现在我就把时间交给 Demi。Demi, I already briefly introduced you. Now I give the floor to you.
Great, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Okay. There we go. Hope that's working. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Today, I'll talk a little bit about summer programs, mostly demystifying the questions there are around summer programs, which ones are worth it, which ones are not. Should we do a summer program every year? Is there value in some summer programs over others? Are summer programs something that admissions officers look at and say, this is amazing, you're getting in? All these kinds of questions that there might be out there about summer programs. I'll be tackling those, but I think before we understand summer programs, and the role, it's important to understand the role that they play in an application, right? So to me, in general, summer program generally fits the bill in what admissions officers call holistic review. And to me, that's part of the applicant narrative. And what's an applicant narrative is really the student's story as an applicant. What is it that they're saying? So that narrative piece is really extracurriculars and things of that nature, right? So that's the role that the summer program will play. It will add to holistic review and to the applicant narrative, which I'll talk about more in detail in a minute. But something that I want to show with this is admissions officers or universities in general, when they think of the different factors that they consider into an application, they'll generally agree that the things that they care about are the ones that are listed here. This was listed in a NACAG a few years ago, so this is not, you know, from last year or any time that's very recent. But I think the general feeling stays the same, right? So grades are at the very top of what is considered important, and then what we call class rigor, right? So grades in college prep courses and strength of curriculum will both fit under class rigor. So good grades in class rigor generally will be very important, so much so that we tend to consider them filters, right? So a student who's in the top or in the lower 60 percentile of a graduating class with a 3.2, it doesn't matter how impressive their narrative is, it doesn't matter how much extracurriculars they've done, they're very, very unlikely to get into a top 10 school. So it's important to keep that in mind as we talk about summer programs, as we talk about narrative building, as we talk about all these different things. The first thing is, within the context of the student's school, try to be as competitive, try to challenge yourself as much as possible, try to be up there in the top 10% of the graduating class, try to challenge yourself with the highest level of rigor courses, especially for the fields that make the most sense. So if you're an engineering person and the school offers, AP Calculus BC and AP Physics C Mechanics, you probably need those because they will add a lot of value to the application, right? So knowing your context, knowing what it is that you need, academically pushing yourself to be in that top 10% of the graduating class or as close as you can to that will definitely make the biggest difference in terms of getting through that filter. Having said that, a lot of students will have that and will still not get in. And that's where, really the narrative building, summer programs, research, cornerstone projects that I've talked about extensively in other webinars and things like that can actually come into place. But I really do want to stress out how important it is, of course, to be as competitive as you can within the context of your school. So I like to have that as a reminder. Of course, in the holistic review elements, it's basically everything that starts from essay or writing sample all the way down, right? So demonstrated interest, which again, it applies to some schools, but not to many schools. Letters of recommendation, incredibly important, especially because they contribute a different voice that talks about the student from an adult perspective, and they really add a lot of value. It's low-hanging fruit to really invest in those relationships with teachers and counselors and all that. A topic for another day, but really, really important as well. So again, I want to stress this just so that we know that within the context of an application, we're really talking about the narrative building. We're really talking about the holistic review elements and not so much about the core things that a student, the filters that a student would need to have, which is generally competitive GPA that is among the top 10, top 15% of the graduating class, class rigor that reflects it as well, and of course SAT scores if available to the student. If not, well, they're not considered. All right, so to talk about what I mean with narrative building, really I just mean the story of the student. And I don't mean the story that we come up with, when we decide to apply and, okay, what's going to be your story? A story can be curated, developed as early as, second semester of 8th grade. In 9th grade, we can get really intentional about doing all these things. So the narrative building can be intentional and it can really start early. And I don't mean, okay, we'll tell the student 100% what to do. No, it doesn't really work that way. It's much more of understanding what the students' interests are, understanding what the students' passions are, understanding what the different things that moves a student. It might be a student that's really interested in, art and physics and music. Well, how do we find ways to capitalize on all that and combine them with a project, with research, with different things? So really, that's what I mean by narrative building, finding the right opportunities for students to develop a story that's cohesive, that's powerful. It's going to be about combining different things. It's going to be about knowing how to discriminate some activities. It's going to be about knowing how to highlight certain activities, knowing where to invest time, how to manage time, when to spend a lot of time on competitions, when not to spend that much time in competitions, when it doesn't become diminishing returns. All of that, it's part of narrative building. All those small decisions that are made, 9th grade, 10th grade, will help create this story that when admissions officers start looking at an application, they can see a trend, they can see growth, they can see cohesion. That's really what we mean by narrative building. To me, there are 3 pillars of narrative building. At least effective narrative building. The first one is an obvious one, specialization, right? Everybody talks about specialization. Everybody talks about, developing like your own focus. And it's true, there's a lot of value to that. It's one of the pillars, I think. So having identified a potential major that we would be targeting. So if it's a student who knows that they want to do business, it's good to know very early or as early as possible that they want to do business so that we can get intentional about the different activities that they will engage in, including summer programs, but also competitions, maybe research, maybe developing a product, maybe developing a company, maybe an app, who knows, right? We talk about that as we see the student's interest. That's often also determines a lot of the course selection, right? If you're going to be, like I said, an engineering student, well, you need to have the highest level of math available to you. You need to have the highest level of physics available to you. If you're doing, math, business, you have to be very well-rounded, have as high as you can in math, as high as you can in English and social sciences, probably try to get an economics class there. So we talk about course selection, and that's in specialization as well. Competitions often heighten a lot of the specialization. So a computer science major generally is going to have USICO, right? The Olympiad for computing. That's almost also a filter for most computer science majors, at least at a top level. But also other things like for most STEM engineering related computer science majors, doing AMC, and all those AMC, qualifying for AME, hopefully the USIMO or something like that, those things can add a lot of value as well. And here, summer programs, which is what we're talking about today mostly, can actually contribute. So a summer program that can be targeted into a major can actually help with the specialization. So if you're doing an LBW with Wharton, that, of course, is a business summer program that will look and contribute to your business background, right? If you're doing an RSI that's focusing on biological research, then that contributes to the narrative, of course. So a summer program can actually contribute to the narrative, whether they are a research-based summer program or a teaching-based summer program or a leadership-based summer program or a seminar-based summer program. They could, via their theme, contribute to specialization. Another thing that contributes to specialization is what I mentioned as the Cornerstone Project. It's another word for a passion project that I feel like it's long-term, but a passion project can, of course, show elements of specialization as well. So that's one of the pillars. The other very important pillar, often overlooked, is impact. And by impact, I mean service, right? So how is the student's specialization contributing to making the world a better place? As cheesy as that sounds, really, it makes a big difference when a student has a so what to why you want to major, why you want to, especially for someone in business or engineering, why do you want to pursue business? And if the answer is, I want to make money and be rich, not as attractive an answer as somebody who says, well, I'm very much interested in, decreasing the gap of inequality between the female labor force and those things. Anything that focuses or helps anything that's social or environmental can have a big impact, and that generally adds a lot to a narrative, right? It's no longer just like, okay, I want to study that because I like it. There's a reason that you're doing it, and generally it is in one way or another to improve society or to make the world a better place. So that's a pillar as well. So finding a connection between specialization and impact is very, very important. That's why, nowadays we joke about this, but it seems like, for every student, there's a nonprofit. And it's an issue, but there are different ways to go around it. I mean, we can definitely talk more about that in a different conversation or in a one-on-one meeting or something like that. But there are, of course, ways of doing that effectively, that it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm just creating a nonprofit because my other 7 friends have one. And then the Cornerstone Project, again, which I talked about. Of course, if a Cornerstone Project combines specialization and impact, then you have 2 of the pillars combined into one project that can be at the forefront of an application. There, generally, a summer program will not have impact unless it is research-based and the research itself has impact. There's a way that a summer program can have impact. But normally, this is something that students will do, outside a summer program. The interdisciplinary element or pillar of narrative building is also quite, important. In fact, I think it's often what makes a difference between students getting into some schools and not getting into some schools is like one-dimensional students that say, okay, I'm only interested in this thing and this thing only, and maybe it will have impact. It's still often not enough. A student, when they are niche enough, where they are intersecting between different fields, often have a little bit of an advantage. So if a student is interested in computer science and history, almost at a similar level, maybe a 60% interest in computer science and a 40% interest in history, they will become more interesting. They just, because of the nature of the things that they're combining, they will likely be a more interesting student. Maybe they do research on history and how to incorporate computing and the digital humanities into doing better research for history. Or maybe they went to El Salvador and they digitized an entire library there, an entire archive. That is something that is particularly unique. It has an international element, it has a social impact element, and it's in the intersection between history and computer science. All of a sudden, that becomes more interesting. It doesn't have to be a field of study, it doesn't have to be history, it doesn't have to be, biology. It could be something like culinary arts. It could be something like a sport. It could be something else that adds a little bit of more flavor to an applicant that I just code, and I code to make the world a better place. When you have this different combination of pillars really working together is when I think a narrative can be really, really successful. So summer programs can for sure help a lot in this area. So sometimes I will recommend students to, maybe 9th grade summer, and we'll talk more about this. 9th grade summer can be, a little bit about exploration within your specialization. Maybe summer of 10th grade, 10th to 11th grade can be about, interdisciplinary stuff where you get to learn more about a different field and its applications to yours. And then the big summer of 11th to 12th grade, maybe a grander, bigger summer program that's far more selective and try to get in. And of course, the Cornerstone Project plays into that role. So that's really at the core of my philosophy as a consultant, is the narrative building approach. That's what I do with all of my students. It doesn't matter whether I get them as 8th graders, 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders. I generally go with a narrative building approach. I try to see where they are, and I create, we help together, we create the most cohesive, powerful narrative that we can, trying to make them as interdisciplinary, as impact-oriented, and as sharp in their specialization as they can. I'll take this moment to brag a little bit. I heard that maybe, Allison did a little bit for me, but this year has been really, really good using this approach. So I had, out of the 15 students that I get, I generally get 15 students per cycle. Out of the 15 students that I get, 12 got into their early round choices. So that, I had among, well, I can just list them. I had one Harvard REA, a male student interested in biology and philosophy, an MIT student, male as well, math and philosophy, Princeton student between physics and art, Columbia, computer science and classics, UPenn Wharton, business and environment, Brown, biology, public health, Cornell, computer science and bioengineering, environmental engineering, sorry. Carnegie Mellon, computer science, education and computer science, and then two recruits, an Amherst recruit for sports, math and computer science, Williams recruit for sports, computer science and math, Duke, a student who did PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics, and then an NYU Stern business and dance. So if you hear basically what I said, there's not one student with one single interest. They all are intersectional. They all have more than one focus in their applications. They are all interdisciplinary. They all have these elements of narrative building that I talked about. And so, I really believe this does help quite a ton in an application, and it makes a really big impact. And some of the combinations are wild. The computer science and classics, business and dance, and that can be a really effective way of thinking about it. You may also notice that there's a lot of computer science. That's normally how it is. Computer science is generally my biggest group of students, and also some business. And interestingly, two philosophies, which is the first time ever that I have two philosophies. So that's not a pattern. It's not, to get into MIT or Harvard, you don't need to be a philosophy major. It's just a coincidence. It could be, something else that they bring into their application besides those two. So yes, let me see. All right, so having said this thing about narrative building, now we know that the role that the summer program plays is within this narrative building approach, right? So that's where the summer programs are going to become useful. So it's not about the summer programs themselves, it is about the summer programs in the service of a narrative. What are they doing for me at this time? That's really what matters. So the contributions of summer programs can be different. It can be prestige, it can be exploration, it can be leadership, it can be specialization, it could be research, it could be a number of things. And determining which one you need at that time is what is helpful with the summer program. Excuse me, for example, ninth grade, right? We're talking to a ninth grader, and the ninth grader doesn't know what they're interested in. They're more like, okay, well, I like pretty much everything in the sciences, all the hard science. I kind of love physics. I kind of love chemistry. I kind of like biology, maybe pre-med, maybe marine biology. I'm not sure, right? So the role of a summer program for me there, it's kind of obvious, an exploratory summer program, right? So we're thinking maybe a pre-college summer program. We look at the ones that are available. The stakes are pretty low, right? Because, it's a ninth grader. They don't have to, they can't do an RSI, they can't do anything like that, right? So we think about which summer program will help them determine a little bit their narrative. What we think of the different summer programs that are available to them for that reason. So, summer at Brown is generally my default, is my, summer program of choice for ninth graders who want to explore a little bit. But it could be any school. Maybe they are fascinated by Harvard and they want to, look into their summer programs that are exploratory. They have every top university, especially the, Ivy League plus schools, will have some kind of pre-college summer program that will likely be, at least in one of its iterations, available to ninth graders for exploration. So that could be the role that a summer program can play for a student, is to explore, maybe take two different classes in different fields, get a sense of whether they like it, get a sense of the university community, learn a little bit about the culture, learn a little bit about the field, and that's the role of a summer program there. Would that be the only thing that they should do that summer? Probably not. Maybe some, research that is also exploratory, maybe some test prep, maybe, and hopefully some kind of, social impact, environmental impact that contributes to the narrative. So really the summers are the space to add to the narrative. It is within the year, of course, you can do it, especially with clubs and, volunteering and things like that. But it is in the summer when we normally make narrative building statements. And the summer program can be one of those, right? So that could be a reason why you do a summer program. You just want to explore. There are many ways of thinking about it. It could be that for, a family, it might not make sense to spend the $10,000 or $8,000 that Summer Brown residential costs. It might not necessarily be the choice, or for another family it can be. It really depends. Is it crucial that a ninth grader does a summer program? No. I would never say you have to do a summer program or you're not getting into a college. No. In fact, summer programs are very much a nice addition to an application. They're not critical to any application. No summer program is critical to any application. You name it. You don't need RSI to get into MIT. You don't need Beaverworks to get into MIT. Will they look nice? Yes, of course. Those do. The vast majority of summer programs don't necessarily make an impact just by doing them. So even if you're doing, I don't know, a business student and you do Essentials of Entrepreneurship at Wharton, the fact that you did that summer program doesn't necessarily make you a stronger applicant for business. It can add to the narrative, yes, because they might see cohesion, that you did one business summer program and then another one and then another one. Okay, there's cohesion there. But automatically, as a default, will it help a business application? Not necessarily. The experience can help. The cohesion between the choices that were made can help, but the program itself will not necessarily help. Again, there are some exceptions. There are some summer programs that, can make a difference. The SSPs, the RSIs, the Promise, the Rosses, the very highly selective, the Bank of America leadership summer program, the Notre Dame leadership seminars, all of those things that are free and incredibly selective. Of course they look nice, because if you went through a process of high selectivity in the single digits and you got in, well, that says a lot about the type of applicant that you are already, right? So there are some that of course contribute because they're so selective. Generally speaking, summer programs really help in narrative building or to play a specific role like we have here. If you need research, a research-based summer program like a Boston University RISE can be the right fit for you. If you need to become more interdisciplinary, you might do a summer program that shows your interest in the intersection between, data analysis, business, and sports, and you do Moneyball at Wharton, right? If we're thinking specialization, a research-based or one that's focused on a single field can potentially help. There are all kinds of different ways in which a summer program can be used. A summer program is a tool, not a requirement for admission. So, and I have a lot of parents say, okay, well, what if, I'm a business, or a student, I'm a business prospect, and I really want to go to Wharton. Would it help if I do ninth grade, essentials of finance, and then I do essentials of entrepreneurship, and then I do a Moneyball, or maybe I do an LBW? Would that help me get into Wharton? The real answer is technically no. So they're not going to go there and look, oh, look, there are, all the Wharton summer programs you've been doing. That will help you a lot in your application. No. However, historically, at least in my experience with my students, and anecdotally, there is some kind of help. And I don't think it's because the admissions officers are impressed that you're doing Wharton summer programs every summer, but because you've been there for so long, you understand the culture a little bit better. You know how to fit with that school a little bit better. Perhaps professors, perhaps you know more of the programs, and maybe in the execution of a narrative will show a better fit with the school. And that might be a reason why somebody wants to like, double or triple down on a particular institution for summer programs. But technically speaking, it shouldn't make a big difference when applying to a school. That's overall true for most summer programs. I've heard in certain instances where, admissions officers say, oh, if you do, the medical summer program at Stanford, it gives you a little bit of a boost. Maybe, that's a highly selective summer program, so it could potentially do it. But as a rule of thumb, a summer program will not necessarily, or a sequence of summer programs will not necessarily help a student get into a particular school because they've demonstrated a lot of interest in the school. If a school has demonstrated interest, which is not true for most top schools, then it can probably, as a form of demonstrated interest, can actually help as well. Some summer programs can be prestige type of boost. Again, the RSIs, the Promise, the Notre Dame leaderships, all of these can actually give a little bit of a boost. Interdisciplinary, if you are, hyper specialized and you need to have a moment where, okay, well, maybe I need something that helps me show how much I care about society as well. Maybe Yale Young Global Scholars would be the right fit, especially at the right time. And what I mean by that is some summer programs make a lot of sense as a ninth grader. Generally, the pre-college programs that are more of a class, spend 2 weeks at a college or a little bit more and get a sense, those are very ninth grade summer programs. You could also do more serious one. And depending on your location, if you're in California and you have access to Cosmos, perfect. Cosmos is an excellent ninth grade summer program. Maybe a USC Shine, which is an engineering summer program without a residential program, which makes it tricky. So if you're not from California, generally that means getting an Airbnb and going to the USC Shine program. But it's a fantastic program that is a little bit more selective. Cosmos a little bit more selective. But generally speaking, ninth grade is a great place for exploration. Maybe an AI for All, if you're interested in computer science. AI for All, Stanford is the one that I would recommend in exploring a little bit there. Again, the Summer at Brown, one or any other summer at or pre-college at type of programs make sense for ninth grade. For 10th graders going into 11th grade, they are an in-between, right? Like those summer programs that are much more about, learn about this field, or they might be a little bit not too helpful, but they also don't have access to a lot of the programs that are almost gate kept for the rising seniors, right? The, Boston University Rise, and basically all of the research-based, or the vast majority of the research-based summer programs will be, if not limited or to rising seniors, they will have a huge preference. Very few rising 11th graders will get into an RSI or anything like that, right? So, and that puts students in a very interesting position for the 10th grade summer program. And if they, again, it's not a necessity. You don't have to necessarily do one in order to be a great applicant. But if we're going to do a summer program as a rising 11th grader, that's a good time to think about, what about the leadership ones? What about, or the ones that are a little bit more on the interdisciplinary? The Yale Young Global Scholars, for example, which is selective, not as selective as a Promise, right? Not as selective as a SAMS in Carnegie Mellon, but still pretty selective, and will look good, and it will add more dimensions to who you are as an applicant, right? Maybe a Brown Leadership Institute, maybe something like that can contribute as well. So we think about the different ways, and we make choices with summer programs and find ways of having like a nice sequence of summer programs that contribute to a narrative that add either specialization, leadership, right? Some summer programs add leadership directly, some summer programs add to this different, 6 categories that I have here. And there are more categories that we can think of that we can easily talk about as well. So certainly there's a wide breadth of things that a summer program can do. And I think more than just like, okay, tell me the 10 summer programs that I should do and I'll do them, is far more of, where are you at this stage? What do you need? What role can a summer program play? and then we determine. Sometimes a summer program will make absolutely no sense. And I will say it to a student. I think in your case, the summer program will be a waste of time. And that might be the case. In some cases, it might be like, hey, you love writing and you want to just do summer programs that are focused on your other interests, which is computer science. How about, you give it a shot and try Alpha for writing summer camp, or an Iowa or a Kenyon. Give it a shot. That might add a different element, different dimensions to who you are as a student. So in my opinion, summer programs, again, are not a must. Summer programs are a great addition. Summer programs can be amazing, but they should be used as they are needed to add to a narrative. They're not going to drive a narrative. Even an RSI or anything like that, they're not going to be, I create this whole application around my summer program. That's not a thing. You can make an application around a cornerstone project, which was, long-term, but around the summer program, not as powerful in my opinion, right? So this is a trajectory example of, somebody doing summer programs that help sort of like that. In this case, I guess this has to be somebody from California that did Cosmos. Cosmos sometimes opens for non-Californians. I think they haven't in the last couple of years, but they sometimes open to non-Californians. Sometimes they're closed to non-Californians. But for example, Cosmos 9th grade for specialization, Yale Young Global Scholars in 10th grade for interdisciplinary social impact / leadership, and then an RSI in 11th grade, or maybe a BeaverWorks, or whatever makes sense with whatever field the student is working on, would be like a nice trajectory of summer programs. Again, I want to really emphasize, this is not necessary, right? Maybe the student didn't do RSI, but they did high-level research, and they were able to, write a book and publish a paper, and then that's fine. RSI is not, everything. One thing I do want to say, though, thinking of RSI, summer programs offer the unique opportunity for students to practice what it's like to apply to college. And that, to me, honestly, is probably one of the biggest benefits of summer applications. Summer program applications are great training, not only for the student to write applications that look like a college application, but they train on how to ask for a letter of rec. They train on how to, work a personal statement, maybe supplemental essays, and they train with me on basically like our dynamic in writing. How do we write together? How do my comments affect the student? How do my edits affect the student? How do the conversations surrounding a summer application help our relationship build and our understanding of styles develop? So if anything, generally, I recommend, even if we don't do any summer program, I recommend applying to at least a couple of them because it's good practice. RSI, for example, is probably the best practice because it has, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 5,000 character essays, which no college application is that extensive, but it's incredible training for a student, getting ready for the next year and a college application. They've already thought about material. They were pushed to think about how, the different interests that they have connect. They are pushed to think about their leadership. So again, outside of like strategically how it helps to a college application, it can be of great help as an exercise in training for what it is going to be like to apply to a college. So I think that's something that's helpful to keep in mind as well. And that is really one of the main reasons I always, in like my November, December meetings with students, whether they are 9th grader, 10th graders, I say, hey, what are the summer plans? Which summer programs are we applying to? You have no idea. Here's what I think based on where you are. And I don't force them to apply to summer programs, but I highly encourage it, again, because it's an option and it has deadlines, but also because the training itself holds a lot of value. So that's, my little spiel about summer programs. I do want to say summer programs are very much case by case. and this is my situation, what summer program looks best for me, what all of this. For all of that, I encourage all of you to just set up a meeting with me or with IvyCompass in general. We're happy to assist with that. I do think, this was of course very broad, and your student or you as a particular major or thinking about this or that will have some variation between what you can do, what you should do in terms of summer programs. So definitely something that it's to be discussed almost in like a one-on-one. But I just wanted to give this broad overview because these are a lot of the questions that I get during my meetings with students, especially around this time when we're thinking about applying to summer programs. So again, summer programs are very, very interesting, very, very important. They can contribute to 2, sometimes 3 of the pillars of narrative building, but they're not the only thing that can contribute. In fact, there's often not a priority. A priority for me would generally be research, would generally be, a cornerstone project and things like that. So, keep that in mind as you're thinking about it. And I'm happy to discuss this in more depth with a specific case with you and your students. So I think, yeah, thank you so much for listening. And I try to keep this it wasn't as short as I wanted it, but I try to keep it as short as possible so that, I can answer some more specific questions. But if they're super specific too, of course, just set up a meeting. I'm happy to talk to you as well. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Demi. So, because before this webinar, when we try to, when we discuss the content with Demi, so we try not to, like name dropping for the summer camp, because we try to actually figure out the logic behind how to select the summer programs. So just like just as Demi mentioned in his presentation, it's very case by case. So one summer school, working for one student who got into MIT probably that's not working for your kid. So we try not, because everybody has ChatGPT right now, right? So if you try to have a list of the most famous or most 我们说的含金量哈like prestigious summer schools, you definitely can find those information, but we just try to explain the reason behind it. Okay, so let me reshare my slide, and then we can start our QA session. Okay, so as Demi mentioned, if you want to have an inquiry meeting with Demi about summer schools, summer programs, or the whole college application strategy, you can scan the QR code on the screen right now, actually on the left side. And of course, if we discuss this, we will provide a list of summer schools in our WeChat groups later from Demi. Yeah, so but that's for your reference. So if you want to get that list, you can also scan 小助手, the WeChat assistant, and get into IvyCompass WeChat groups. I think, yeah, it's a QR code for WeChat assistant. Yeah, so I will leave these slides here so you can screenshot it. I know a lot of you guys log in on your iPhone, so you can screenshot it and then later you can scan it. Okay, so let's start the QA session. Demi, so somebody actually mentioned your second slides. Can you maybe, delve into details about the second slide regarding the importance of factors? Somebody, they did not really fully get it.
Right. So that's actually, we have an annual conference for consultants and counselors, college counseling departments in high schools and college consultants. It's called NACAC, right? And that happens every year. And every year, or not every year, but sometimes they have questionnaires of what are the things, and also admissions officers attend. All admissions officers attend this. And so they ask questions to admissions officers, and this was based out of a questionnaire of what are the things that matter the most in an application. And so their answers were as shown in the second slide, which is GPA, overall GPA the highest, then it was curriculum and class rigor, sort of like as a top things.
Okay, so I will also share the screenshot of that slide in the WeChat groups. So so let's go to the next question. For the pillar of impact part, nonprofit organization means the students should form such organizations. Demi, I think you already provided the explanation. Maybe so you still say it again. So maybe the parents or audience who log in late still can get that information.
Yeah, so some, the social impact part, a nonprofit would be great. Nonprofits are a great way of, meeting the social impact part, but that's not the only way. I mean, if you have, for example, a cornerstone project that it's an app, that the app has itself social impact, that could cover social impact. You could also do, be part of an organization that it's not necessarily your organization. That could be social impact. There are different ways of achieving that. One of them, and generally a pretty effective one, is having a nonprofit. Again, the biggest issue that we see now is that there's so many nonprofits, so many students with their own nonprofit, and it's gotten to a point where it's a little bit comical because I have students who have 10 students who have each of them have a nonprofit, and they ended up joining each other's nonprofit so that each nonprofit has 10 people. So there are really interesting ways in which you can go about that, but social impact or environmental impact or any kind of impact is really, really important.
Okay, can you actually still name dropping several summer camps you recommend for STEM and business trajectory?
So for business, for example, the biggest ones that I recommend for business are generally the Wharton ones. I'm a big fan of them. Most summer programs at Wharton have different levels of selectivity, and I really like them. I think M&T is perfect for anyone who's interested in the intersection between engineering and business. LBW is a great one for students who are interested in leadership in business. Moneyball is excellent for anyone who's interested in like data and sports and business. So I really, really like the Wharton summer programs that are for business. I think those are great. I saw that there are a lot of questions about different types of summer programs, leadership ones. For leadership, of course, I recommend the Bank of America one. If you can get into the Bank of America leadership program, do it. That's probably the best one. There's going to be great program as well. The Notre Dame's leadership one. Georgetown has a great leadership one. Brown has a leadership institute, which is good too. So there's a wide range of selectivity for leadership. Those four I think are pretty solid. Tufts has a good one too. So if you Google leadership program and then the name of the school, you're likely going to see something. So I see for writing and for can you list them in writing? I think so. Allison will send a list of all of them, probably with links too. So you'll be able to see not only the name but also the link to the different summer programs as well.
I think like some of them actually maybe they don't accept the ninth grade rising 10th
grade, which is often the biggest issue. So they're going to be like the most selective summer programs generally are going to be rising seniors only. Some of them will be some rising 11th graders, some of them, but the vast majority of them are going to be for rising seniors. And so that level of selectivity changes a lot, and the different programs that make the most sense for you may be different because you're not eligible for X and Y and C. There are a lot of like state only summer programs. If you're in the state of Massachusetts, for example, there are great summer programs that are only true for people who live in the state of Massachusetts. If you're in California, there's some great summer programs that are only for the people who. So there's some great summer programs out there. We're going to send a list for like the math ones. Promise and Ross are fantastic for, general physics, some engineering, SSP and things like that. So we will send some, I see an interesting one, biology and business. I don't know if there's a summer program that combines those two, but that would be interesting. So maybe probably that would make sense with like a young Yale Global Scholars in one of their seminar sections. But I would probably say, a summer program that is business and in a summer program that is biology related. So again, I think, for those very specific questions about what summer program makes the most sense for my particular case, we'll send the list, but also I'm happy to talk about those things in an inquiry meeting or whatever.
Okay, so this is a good question actually. We attended the same college summer programs more than once. Will be beneficial or will be helpful to increase the chance to being.
Yeah, I think I spent some time talking about this too during the presentation, and the answer is technically no. Historically yes. So technically there is no benefit in doing the same summer program or the summer program at a same institution more than once. But it can actually help the student have a better understanding of the school's culture. It can help the student have a better knowledge of the professors and overall develop a better fit with the school. So to give an example, I've had two students who did 2 Wharton summer programs in a row, and they both got into Wharton. Again, I don't think they got in because of that, but I'm sure it didn't hurt. And again, I don't mean that repeating or doing summer programs at the same place necessarily, did amazing for them, but it helped for them having the right fit.
Or do you think maybe maybe they attend like once pre-college course type of summer program? So maybe the same college that provides another research oriented. So maybe it's a different type of summer programs. Maybe
generally I would not recommend repeating the same summer program. I think if you're doing a summer program at the same institution, my recommendation would be a different one that's offered by the same institution. Most institutions offer more than one summer program. So they might have like their pre-college program, and they might have an institute or an academy, and they will maybe have a research-based summer program or something like that.
Okay, that's an interesting question. How does a startup compare to a nonprofit in the eyes of the AO? Because this audience mentioned that why college prefer a nonprofit over I make money for myself? So
because undergrad institutions are really focused on not accepting a specialized brain. They're interested in accepting like a member of a community. So they're really focused on, how is it that, you as a student can contribute to the school community and then to the world beyond that. So however, I would not say that always a startup will be under a nonprofit. I think a startup could potentially be at the same level of a nonprofit if the goal of the startup is to make impact, or if the startup is doing something that has impact elements. So startups are completely fair, and they could be a great way they could be a great cornerstone project. But I think if if the whole purpose is just I make money with it and that's what I love doing, I think that might be good for some schools, but it's going to be very few schools. Maybe Babson will like that, or Bentley, but Wharton, Stern, Dyson might not necessarily be as into that as they would be for impact and those things.
Okay, so the next question. So I think several parents ask the same type of question. So the geographic location of your ED for maybe the state. I'm not sure if you think that's appropriate to disclose.
Sure. I can say broadly speaking, they're generally in one coast or the other. So it's either California or New York, New England, Virginia. I think that pretty much covers 90-something% of them. So
highly
it's
competitive areas.
So mostly, interestingly enough, the acceptances are pretty well varied, but yes, I think it's California and also a lot of schools in the East Coast, a lot of New York, New Jersey area, Virginia, probably the biggest, most represented ones. Fairfax County has a good representation. There's some areas in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut that have very good representation, and in California for the most part on the west side. So generally Silicon Valley area, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sure. It would be better.
And I think they ask if public, or I think this cycle is mostly public this cycle. 1, 2, 3 private, and the rest public.
Okay, so actually, I think the next question I want to pick is very, actually, I see it a lot from other parents. So, which summer program is better between research summer program at the University of Santa Barbara versus the YYGS at Yale for a STEM students? Because YYGS is very, very popular among our parents.
It depends on the grade and whether or not they have research already. So I'm guessing this is an RMP, maybe, with the research mentorship program at UC.
At Santa Barbara?
Probably an RMP. So I would say selectivity-wise, they're similar. So they both have a similar level of selectivity. So it would be which one makes the most sense for this particular student. So if they haven't had any research, then and there's no other way to do research, then of course RMP. But if they already have research and we're working on other things, then it really, I'm sorry to say, but it really depends on the particular situation of the student. But they are comparable in terms of selectivity.
How students show true interest, like when they enter their first and second choice of majors in the application?
Well, it's really all narrative building. So the way that you demonstrate interest is basically by every tiny decision that you make from 9th grade to 12th grade. So really, I mean, in the narrative building approach, we get super intentional about the clubs that you're engaging with, the summer programs that you're selecting, the research that you're doing, independent research, and also lab-based research. So, we talk about the different ways that can be done. It's basically the way that you show an interest is by using your extracurriculars to put forth that as well.
Okay, so I see a lot of parents ask them pre-med or bio summer camps. So I mean, besides the the name dropping the summer camps, Demi, can you also like elaborate a little bit on if the student want to be pre-med path, what's the competitiveness they will face, and if you work as their college consultants, what's recommendation or the suggestion you would give to them for the pre-med kid?
So for pre-med students, I mean, the first thing that I would say is if we're starting in 9th grade, I would really want to know how much do they want the pre-med background. Going pre-med is highly competitive. Also sometimes strategically unnecessary, because biology is in the College of Arts and Science, and you could potentially, if the student has multiple interests, and biology is one of them, and pre-med is one of them, we could get a little bit more creative for what we do there. But if they absolutely love biology and they want to get into a lab and they want to start doing research, I think in that case, it's really important for students to really take summer programs seriously, but also summer internships. Like whether you're going to a Mayo lab in Minnesota, or you are doing Stanford's pre-med program over the summer, I think it's important for pre-med students to get some lab experience, probably do USABO, which is the Olympiad for biology, and really get into the impact side of things by adding elements of public health into the mix, or having like a strong story of why pre-med that shows a commitment, again, to making the world a better place. So there are some strong, very strong summer programs always in biological research. And I always push for independent research, but when it comes to biology pre-med, it's difficult to make good research without a lab. So generally, it's going to be good summer programs. A lot of the top summer programs, a Boston University Rise, a UC Santa Barbara RMP, the Stanford one, and many others will have ways in which a pre-med bio student would be able to tap into a lab and be able to do research there.
Okay, so I guess my next question is, if the students are actually participate in a lot of pre-med oriented summer camps and internships, but maybe the GPA is not really that high, or or maybe they suddenly realized this path is too competitive to get into the good schools, do you think they still has a chance to change it to another path? Or
Maybe.
yeah.
I think it depends on what other extracurriculars they have. If this is a rising senior and all they've done is pre-med stuff, labs and things like that, it might be a little bit tricky, but oftentimes it's easy to go from pre-med bio to public health, for example, or to pre-med bio to psychology. But it can be tricky to go from pre-med bio to philosophy, right? So I mean, it really depends on what it is, what are the other things that they were doing, in how we can pivot with what they have into something else. But it's been done in the past. I mean, I've done it a few times with students, so it's definitely doable. The biggest concern with that specifically is because if you pivot away from engineering, that's fine, because you won't be applying to the College of Engineering. If you pivot away from business, that's fine, because you won't be applying to a business school. But if you pivot away from pre-med bio, the admissions officers will still be suspicious, because you're going to enter the College of Arts and Science anyway, and at any point you're just going to switch into biology, which definitely is not something that when they're shaping will look too good. But we can definitely talk about that case by case, and seeing what it is that the student has and how we can pivot away from that.
Okay, so multiple parents ask how to showcase your summer activity in the Common App. Like, it's like in the activity list, or through your essay.
All of the above. So it depends on the different activities that you have. Generally, I'm all about depth instead of breadth. So if you have 27 activities, unfortunately, it will be hard to showcase all of them, which is why we do a narrative building, right? Which is why we do a cornerstone project, maybe one competition or two, maybe, so that we fit the 10 slots and hopefully the 20 slots with awards for UCs, but the 10 slots for a Common App. And we really highlight those really well on the activity list. But then the supplemental essays will likely also include different angles of how those activities have shaped you and your narrative. So it's a little bit of a dance between what is put on the Common App activity list, what it's written, and how these activities are expressed through supplemental essays, maybe a little bit in a personal statement, but it's really a combination of all of those. Again, if you have 27 activities that are all different and a little bit superficial, far weaker application than having 10 well-developed, deep, and powerful activities, which again, it all comes with narrative building. So that's why we go, we curate the experience from 9 to 12 to make sure the activities that we have will represent good leadership. So, maybe if you are active in only 3 clubs instead of 7, you might be able to get leadership positions within the clubs. Maybe if you started a nonprofit in 10th grade and continued working on that, that's only 1 activity, but you will have more depth. A research program, a product, and things like that will generally help, create a strong, powerful activity list in the Common App. And then maybe, again, you don't repeat what you wrote in the description for a Common App activity list into the essays. you talk about it from a completely different angle, and how it shaped you, or how it makes you, a creative thinker, or how it, depending on the prompt. But yes, activity list, really, the activities that you do, make sure that they're not so many of them, but very deep, and that they can connect with one another. That really is at the core of the narrative building. Making sure that the activities play a certain role in one of the pillars, and that they can be connected with other activities to contribute to other pillars as well. So that's really the main goal with the activities. It's really going to be what, the proof of your narrative is going to be in your activity list, and your essays. So very, very important.
Okay, so this one's a good question. What are some alternatives to summer programs in 11th grade? Who is interested in economics and public policies?
So 11, is that from 10 to 11 or 11 to 12?
I guess maybe 11, like rising 12th grade.
Okay, well, a ton. So if we're rising, and what was the field, sorry? You said public policy?
What are some alternatives to summer programs in 11th grade?
But what were the fields?
Who is interested in economics and public policies? The alternatives to summer programs.
Public policy and economics. I think a great leadership program would likely be it will likely be a leadership summer program that's going to make the most sense, depending on how accomplished of an applicant you are. A Notre Dame seminar would be amazing. A Bank of America one would be fantastic. Maybe one of the Wharton business summer programs, it's leadership focused. Maybe a Georgetown leadership and business summer program could be okay for less selectivity. But yeah, I mean, that would be something that I would love to discuss in a meeting, because it really depends on what they've done up to that point, in whether or not there's a summer program that makes more sense than, say, research. Because if the student hasn't done anything that combines public policy and economics up to that point, that summer might be the right time to do independent research about the intersection between economics and public policy, right? So there are different potential things that could be done, not necessarily a summer program, but maybe independent research through, Lumiere, Polygence, or something like that. And so again, there could be different options beyond summer programs that might be the best option, or a combination of both.
Okay, so CS summer camps at Columbia University, or a summer intern in a small CS company, if they have to choose one.
What grade?
No, they did not mention.
Okay, generally I would say computer science summer camps, unless they are the highly selective ones, they're only useful if you need the training. Like if the student needs to learn a little bit more and, exposed to that. But for the most part, most of the coding, you don't learn at a summer camp or at a class. Even you grind, right? It's Codes Forces teach you how to code. So I would say there's probably, in most cases, working with a startup in computer science where they will actually use your skills will likely be of more benefit. Again, I don't know the exact situation, but I think in most cases that would probably be true.
Yeah, so basically you need to do something, not just buy coffees, right? Not just buy coffee for the team. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Which is good. I think they mentioned a small company, which it sounds like it's a startup. Generally for internships, I would go with a startup, because they need the free labor, and free labor means you're actually going to do stuff, and you're actually going to have stories about it, and it can contribute a lot more.
Okay, so I see I think it's international students ask the question. Any recommendation for international students if they want to come to US for summer programs?
Yeah, so I would say, not every great summer program will accept international students, but some will. The Yale Young Global Scholars, for example, accepts international students. There are going to be some great opportunities for international students. So definitely there are opportunities out there. So depending on the major and all that, we could figure out potential options. for summer programs, if you have the ability and the time to travel and do a summer program in the US, I do think it's good because for international students, because it shows that you've been in the US already, you've adapted already a little bit in a transition period. So I think, that gives a little bit of comfort to an admissions office when somebody already has had exposure to the country and you're not just applying blindly to a country that you know nothing about. So I do recommend highly, in fact, perhaps more than domestic students to, if they have the availability to do a summer program in the US.
Okay. In addition to summer camps, what else would you recommend a ninth grader to do?
If they know more or less what they like, an independent research project can be great so that they have like an origin story. So if they know they're going to be between the intersection of art and physics, and they do a very, of course, it's not going to be high level, but it's going to be very exploratory, independent, research project paper that they write and they publish about the intersection between, say, certain art and physics. That would probably be something that I would recommend. I would also recommend getting started with the impact side of things. So whether it's joining or creating a nonprofit or just, engaging in service that will match the narrative as well. In my opinion, those two things are probably the best thing you can do as a rising 10th grader is do a little bit of research that will show, some kind of commitment to a field or an exploration that indicates a certain interest, the impact side of things, and you can add a summer program to that. Generally, I also like to say, well, if you're interested in STEM and you want to do, AMC 10, practice for that as well, maybe some test prep, maybe some Olympiad training, depending on the field of study.
Okay. Okay, let me see. Yeah, we still can, you still have time or you still have some energy for more questions?
Yeah. Give me a couple more.
Yeah, so I give a couple more and then I probably will give the opportunity to unmute some audience so they can raise hands. I already see one raise hand. So okay, let me throw you another several questions. This one, I think this was highly prestigious. This one I see in the chat box. Let me see where's the questions. It's about the Texas Anson Clark Scholar Program. I think they only accept 12 students.
Very few students. So obviously great. So basically any summer program that you see, we accept 10, 15, 20, 50 people and they're free, they're great. So those are the level of summer programs that of course will look good in an application. And certainly if, the student has the background to apply for them, totally. I mean, those are the summer programs that I would say definitely worth it to have under your belt.
Okay, so when you actually directed students or recommend students to do the summer program research, it will be like they do the college research, so it's it got several layer, highly competitive one or target one, safety one. So it's a
depending on the stage that they're at. For example, in some cases for some rising seniors, I will tell them do a highly selective summer program or don't do a summer program at all, because it might be that they will not benefit from a safety summer program. They will not benefit, they're going to pay $8,000 and they're just going to waste time because they're already too advanced for that level of summer program. So they're going to be sometimes for 9th graders and 10th graders, generally I do offer some kind of range of selectivity between summer programs and say, hey, this one is highly, highly selective. This one is a little less so, but still worth applying to. But in some cases, I will say, well, where you are at right now, either get into one of the ones that have like a 7% acceptance rate, or don't waste your time and money with a summer program and do, something else instead. So I think it really depends on the situation of the student and where they're at that moment. If the student, has a company in a product, and they are, selling it internationally, and they do all these things of social impact, and they're working on recruiting more people and adding more money, and they're thinking, oh, I'm gonna do essentials of finance at Wharton. No, that's not going to be useful at all anymore. That was maybe when you were ninth grade and you were just starting. You're at a level now where it's going to be a waste of money and time.
Okay, I like this question. Like, what's the most creative summer activities your students ever participate in?
Well, some have been very, very creative. I would say generally the ones that do something big for their narrative are the ones that I like the best. To give an example, I have a student who did a really nice, they spent their summer doing research in Mexico and Cancun for sargassum, and they were all about the intersection between the environment and business. And so they did environmental research in its effects on the local economy in Cancun. I think that's a very, very cool summer program, a summer way to spend part of the summer, by the way, because he also did other stuff. But that, intersected in their narrative perfectly. They added an international component. They had research. They had business and environment. They created a paper from that. No, the idea was mine. So generally, so that's part of the work, is coming up with these type of ideas of what the student can do. I mean, that's part really of the narrative building process that I do, is, hey, you have this opportunity. Would you be able to do this? Oh, you really care about, the role that something internationally does, and how can you, engage with that? So that, again, in my part of my, or probably at the core of what I do as a consultant, is make sure that the narrative building elements, like those little ideas for summer, or those ideas for a combination of fields, or ideas for major selection, anything that's narrative building, I like to be super hands-on with it. So it's not the student choosing their narrative entirely, it is the student choosing their passions and me offering, potential avenues for building a narrative. Normally that's the dynamic, and things like that summer, I think, which I really like, do that.
Okay, this question. Am I right in thinking a startup and a paid internship is almost always better than free solid summer schools than the pricey summer camps by prestigious schools?
Maybe for the most part. I think there could be instances where the student already has too much internship background that, it's no longer necessary to do something like that. But generally speaking, kind of, yes.
Okay. Debate camps help?
Debate camps, if they are working on debate as part of their narrative, debate, debate is one of these really interesting activities because it's incredibly time consuming, and by itself, it doesn't really help too much in application if you're not ranked really high. But debate actually is an amazing bridge between fields. So you can connect a lot of fields through debate. So debate camps and anything debate related can actually be a really nice contribution, even if just logically it's not as helpful and it's very time consuming. It could potentially act very well as a bridge between different fields. And in that case, the debate summer camps can be great opportunities for a student to grow in their interest and develop, narratives and things like that can be effective. So if the student loves debate and they like to do the debate camps, I would not, say, no, don't do it, you're going to waste time. I think, again, it depends a lot on the situation of the student and where they're at. And if they're doing debate, but also DECA, and also they row, and also they play tennis competitively, then they don't have time for anything else. And there's going to be hard to do a narrative. So it's a lot about, managing the time commitments with different activities and making sure there's a balance between where the time is being spent.
Or because I see debates shows up a lot in students' resume. So do you think actually debates help more for maybe humanity or social science students than STEM students?
Well,
Or, yeah.
Oftentimes it's the other way around. I think if they use debate to connect to society, debate can be a great bridge that helps students have a more interdisciplinary approach. And I think, debate is something that, it's very present in a lot of my students. And oftentimes it helps, but also oftentimes it can be, I think it's a tricky one because it's very time consuming and it's very common. It just has to be used with a very particular angle for it to be very helpful. So definitely something to talk about with me, and how do we use debate for a narrative? How do we use debate to, if you've been doing computer science up until 11th grade and all of a sudden you're all interested in anthropology and you have no way to explain why, debate can be the easy narrative of how you make that connection.
Okay. Do you recommend a student to pick undersubscribed major? What does undersubscribed major?
Yeah. Majors that are not impacted. It depends. If the student clearly loves engineering and wants to be a mechanical engineer, and that's their entire passion, and they're not super great at English and writing, and they don't enjoy reading that much, I would not say forget about engineering, study philosophy to get into college, because they're going to be miserable. But I think when it makes sense, of course, my suggestion would be to find the most interesting, creative choices with majors. And it's not always as simple as, philosophy or history or something like that. It could very well be, for example, PPE, which is philosophy, politics, and economics, or an STS, which is science, technology, and society. Those type of majors can often be not super impacted majors, but that have a lot of room, interdisciplinary room for the students to develop their interest at a high level, but still have a major that allows them to be not as competitive as, say, biology or economics or an engineering or business.
Okay. The next question, what about getting an internship in an investment firm, which has nothing to do with impacting community or environment? As a high school students get an internship in an investment firm?
If I'm an admissions officer, I'm pretty sure that the student knows someone in the investment firm.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think if the experience yields a lot of great experiences from the student and they write about them, I think it can be good. But generally speaking, I'm not sure if it's going to be too helpful unless there are some great stories that come out of that experience.
Or sometimes
if it's a small firm, if it's a small startup firm, and the student is doing a lot of work, the same applies as a internship, where it would be great experience. But of course, if it doesn't have a social impact element, maybe the student uses that experience and says, oh, I learned this skill there, and then I applied it in this next activity that I did, where I combined what I learned at the firm and I used it to generate social impact or something like that. But I do like that it's a small firm a lot better than something huge. And
so sometimes about it's about the authenticity, right? So if it's kind of look, oh, I know somebody, my parents push me, know somebody and get me in, so maybe it will counterproductive.
It could be. Again, it depends on how it's written about. So that's what really matters. If it's written about in a way that's pretty vague, and I spent 6 months as an intern at a firm that happens to be owned by my father, it will not necessarily look too good. It doesn't necessarily, they're not going to judge you, but it depends on how good the stories that come out of it are, and that could actually help. But generally speaking, it wouldn't be what I think of, oh, okay, this is an amazing opportunity.
Okay, so sure. Okay, liberal arts college. So, if you're looking to apply for liberal arts college, what kind of narratives do they look for? Are they a little bit different?
They're not different. I would say, the same things apply at the same level. So, the same pillars of narrative building, being interdisciplinary. Really, liberal arts colleges will look the same way into a student that a research-based liberal arts institution like the Ivy Leagues will look into the student. The difference, I would say, is that they perhaps will care a little less about research than with the research-based institutions. Where it starts to be a little bit different, though, I would say if you're interested in like powerhouses in particular fields. I'm thinking, for example, computer science, and a student is interested in UIUC or, UW Seattle, or schools like that. There, the narrative building loses a little bit of power. I feel like there it's a little bit more about numbers and impressing in the interest. But yeah,